If you like to make your NFL games a little bit more interesting, you've come to the right place. It's the Even Money Podcast with Ross Tucker and Steve Fezzik.
Yeah, Vegas, baby, Vegas. It is the Even Money Podcast. We are, of course, presented by DraftKings. Love me some DraftKings. Just use the code Ross if you're playing best ball over on the DraftKings app, or if you're placing some wagers like a lot of you like to do on the DraftKings Sportsbook app. That's me, Ross Tucker. You can follow me on social media. Appreciate those of you that do, at Ross Tucker NFL. It's really either NFL stuff or beer stuff or food stuff. I would think most of you probably like all of those. So at Ross Tucker NFL, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. We even have a YouTube page, which is growing in subscribers and popularity by the week. YouTube.com/Ross Tucker NFL. Always love doing this show. By a per episode basis, at least during the season, it's our most popular show, even more so than the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. But that's during the season when you guys are all placing your bets. Although it's crazy. I mean, next week I'm going to be talking with Steve about what bet he's thinking about for the Hall of Fame game. It's just crazy. I mean, the Hall of Fame game's 9 days away. As we're recording this Tuesday morning, every team basically is reporting to training camp, which is amazing. I mean, Steve, it's kind of go time, man. I mean, there's not like an NFL bet necessarily to make. There's not an NFL game to watch this week, but there is news with holdouts and there will be injuries. I mean, like it's starting, contracts and holdouts and all that stuff. Jordan Love's not practicing yet for the Packers, although that deal should get done. Next week, we'll be able to talk about the Hall of Fame game. And after that, we'll be talking about the whole how to bet the NFL preseason and betting preseason week 1, Steve.
As soon as the temperature drops below 110 in Vegas, which it is doing, it's time to start betting football, Ross. And this is a big-time podcast. You know it, in the big leagues of podcasting. We wear sleeves here, Mr. Vaughn. I'm ready to go.
Well, Steve, yes, wearing sleeves this week. Check him out on social media at Fezzik Sports and only at Fezzik Sports. Here's what we got today. Steve had an epiphany, or has even more thoughts on the new kickoff rule. I feel like we've done this 3 times, so I'm really interested to hear what is different or new this time, and I may disagree with Steve. Then Steve has some more games of the year for weeks 12 and 13. We love your email questions. Before we get into any of that, though, Steve, I'm curious. There's holdouts. There's guys getting contract extensions. There will be injuries. How closely are you, or do you need to be monitoring all of the NFL information that's coming down the pike now that all the teams are reporting for camp and there's news coming out, whether it's contracts, injuries, whatever?
All that matters are quarterbacks, because nothing else moves the needle. So I don't need to monitor it nonstop because it is important. But the markets don't move other than quarterback injuries. Probably the poster child of why you do need to monitor things 24/7. Things like the Andrew Luck retirement, by example. Like as soon as that hit, boom, you could play the Colts under 10 wins. You had a small window of making bets that were too good to be true. And you just never know when news like that might hit. And you want to be at the computer and you've got literally, 35 seconds to bomb in bets like that.
Okay, so 2 questions on that. Number 1, what if it's what if Justin Jefferson, or what if it's a really good player? To me, it seems like maybe there's some value in the weekly game odds early in the season and maybe even season win totals. You're suggesting only quarterbacks move the needle. I guess what I'm suggesting is I think there's some other players that maybe they don't move the needle, but if they get hurt, Steve, and the needle's not moving, then I'm I would be taking action because I think that they do make a difference.
Yeah, you're spot on. I misspoke. So if a player's going to be out like Justin Jefferson, I mean, he's worth a point a game. 17 games, that's 17 points. That's worth half a win. So I'm speaking more in terms of a player being slightly compromised, maybe being out for, one game, and you go through your progression. So if you knew Jefferson was going to be out for the Vikings, boom, immediately you're going to go, or if he's injured, you're going to go and try to bet dude under for his reception yards for the year, right? And his touchdowns for the year. And you're going to attack it directly. Then you're going to attack week 1, and you're going to say, I'm going to bet the Giants pick them week 1 against the Vikings. And then you're going to look towards the Vikings, playing their season win under and also playing their early games against them in games of the year.
Got it. The other thing is, because I know you've talked about this other weeks, and it's why you're such a fan of sportsinjurycentral.com, is the cluster injury thing. My question, I guess, about that on the cluster injury thing is, do you take note of cluster injuries during training camp, or is that more during the season, during that week? They're down 3 corners, they're down 2 offensive linemen. Is that a training camp thing as well, or is that really just, let's see what their cluster injuries are that week?
Yeah, it's more during the regular season. There's not enough time typically for there to be cluster injuries, early in camp, but it can happen. I will say this, Ross. One of the things I really like to do in my preseason betting, when I see a team and the injuries are just stacking up, way more than for an average team, I wanted to ask you about this. It's just human nature. If I'm the coach, I'm like, that's it. Nobody else is getting hurt, and I'm pulling out my starters way earlier than I normally would. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think that there's some truth to that. I think specific positions. I will say this. When I played, it felt like every year, Steve, there was one position that was like snake bit. And so what happens is one, let's just say D tackle gets hurt. Well, then all the other D tackles need to take a couple extra reps. There's still a first string, a second string, and a third string, right? So now, the first string guy might also do some second string, or the second string guy might have to take all the third string. Next thing you know, he gets hurt. Next thing you know, they're bringing in 3 guys for tryouts and signing 2 of them because they don't want to get any more D tackles hurt, and but they need people to take those reps. So that is absolutely a thing. And yes, there are coaches that, of course, like they're like, we're snake bit here. This isn't working. I don't want to take the chance. Or they might still play guys at other positions, but they're not going to play their starters at that position, right? Like they're not going to take the chance that anybody gets hurt at that spot.
Yeah, it's a great point. And I want to ask you as an offensive lineman, I would think if you've been getting all your reps at left tackle and now you got to move to center, your injury risk probably goes up just because it's a slightly different motion and unusual. And I would guess, am I correct?
1,000%. Well, not only that, just in general, the interior offensive line is riskier than the edge guys because there's more bodies and more congestion and more train wrecks and piles. It's why what Kelsey just did for the Eagles is just, he's just started it was like 150 straight games. It's just unbelievable as an undersized center. It's like, but he's so athletic that, he was able to avoid those serious type of injuries. But yes, that's part of it. And then also different body movements for sure. Different things than what you're used to. Speaking of different things than what you're used to, Steve, let's dive into the what we had talked about earlier, but you have new news or new thoughts on the new kickoff rule.
Yeah, so I want to make 3 points. One is I'm now 100% convinced you should have your regular kicker kicking off. He should kick a corkscrewing, difficult to catch ball, line drive that's going to land right around the goal line. So think about this. If it lands on the fly in the end zone, returning team gets the ball in the 30. That's good. But what if you don't know if it's going to land in the end zone or not? If it hits on the 1 and bounces in the end zone, you get the ball in the 20. That's kind of a disaster. So you can see it really puts a difficult decision to the kick returner. So that would be the optimal kick, to land it like right between the 0 and the 1, right around there, and make it hard for the returning team. 2 other epiphanies I had. It's going to help the big underdog. So if you have a 16-point underdog, you're going to get better field position receiving kickoffs. Well, who receives more kickoffs? That big underdog, because the big favorite's scoring more. If they score 3 more times, boom, I'm the bad team. I'm going to start at my own 29 on average instead of my own 25. That's an extra 12 yards, Ross. In field position, that's worth a point, and that's significant. So it's going to help the big underdogs. And the third epiphany, field goals. Short field goals are going to become a thing of the past. If your opponent's going to start close to their 30 after you kick off, you're not going to kick a field goal 4th and goal from the 3 anymore. The analytics people are going to say, hey, I'm losing 27 yards of field position. If I kick this field goal, I'm just going to go for it. The field goal's not worth very much. And so you're going to see more teams going for it deep in the red zone, 4th and goal from the 2. It's a no-brainer now. I don't care how bad your offense is. You got to go for it.
Really, all really good thoughts, Steve. Really good thoughts, and I mean that. These are the type of things that I think the teams are considering. I don't know that they're going to go as far as you're going with the short field goal, but I think the teams that are heavy on the analytics will consider that hey, even if we make it, they're going to get the ball probably close to the 30. Talking with some people, Steve, it seems like there are going to be teams that just kick it into the end zone and say, look, if they're going to average the 28, 29 anyway, why would we give them the chance to take it back for a touchdown when we can just give them the 30? I think there's going to be some teams that just give them the 30. I'll tell you why, Steve. If you're a special teams coordinator, okay? And by the way, this is why this show's good, because Steve gives you the math and the numbers behind things, and then I give you sort of the inside locker room. The special teams coordinator is not going to be fired for kicking touchbacks and the team gets the ball at the 30. But if you allow a touchdown, kickoff return for a touchdown, that's how you can get fired. You do that 2 weeks in a row, you probably are fired, right? So for the sake of a yard and a half on average, I think a lot of the special teams coordinators, because they're more concerned about their job security than they are that extra yard and a half. And so I think a lot of them are going to take the conservative route and just tell their kicker to blast it away, especially early in the season until they have a better feel for this thing.
And pursuant to that, the optimal kick is actually kick it 1 or 2 yards into the end zone. All right? That way you are kicking into the end zone, and you know what? It's a clear-cut mistake to return any kick that goes in the end zone, but some guys will do it, especially if it's really close to the goal line. No one's going to second-guess a special teams coach that kicks off and it makes the end zone. Because of that, that's the optimal kick.
No one will also ever second-guess you drinking Labatt Blue Light. You want to take things to the next level? I'll be back. I was at the beach all weekend drinking Labatt Blue Light and Labatt Blue Light Lime, by the way. I'll be back next weekend drinking Labatt Blue Light and Labatt Blue Lime. I kind of alternate. Living life to the power of we. Always enjoy responsibly. Beer, Labatt USA, Buffalo, New York. Really good thoughts, Steve, across the board on that. It's going to be fascinating. The other part of that, start with the Hall of Fame game next week and the Eagles, like I do the Eagles preseason games. So curious to see how these teams play it in the preseason. I think there's going to be some teams that are going to say, you know what? I want to test different things and see how they work. So let's just do it. Other teams are going to say, I figured it out. I listened to Even Money with Fezzik, and I know it's the corkscrew kick to the goal line. I'm not doing that in the preseason. I don't want people to know that that's what my strategy is going to be. So it'll be very, very interesting throughout. I also want to get your thoughts, Steve, on a couple of the games you really like. Week 12, you like the Bucks on the money line at the Giants November 24th. Why is that?
Yeah, so whenever you're shopping in real estate, you're looking to buy a house. The thing you look at for price is comps. What's a comparable house? Can I get my house cheap? So this is a really cheap house on Tampa Bay at the Giants. Why? I'm getting Tampa minus 115. Well, week 1, the Giants are home and they're playing the Minnesota Vikings. Well, Tampa is clearly in everyone's power ratings better than the Vikings, significantly better. Yet the Vikings are pick'em at the Giants week 1. You know what? Don't bet the Vikings week 1 at the Giants when you can get a much better team. You can get Tampa, almost an average team, pick'em at the Giants. Of course, you got to wait till week 12, but that is the investment to make Tampa Bay minus 115 at the Giants.
Wow. It's unbelievable to me, Steve, how you look at things and how you go through all the games and you see missed price games like that. I love it. Absolutely awesome. All right, what about week 13? You're taking the Eagles +4 at Baltimore December 1st. Is this just one of those examples, Steve, where you and I love getting the 3.5 or 4?
Ross, you're going to love this bet more than any of the other bets because, yes, one, we love +3.5, +4. Getting that, if it lands on 3, we win. Further, I'm not sure the Eagles and Baltimore, there's any real power rating difference between these two teams. Money has been pouring in on Philly and it's been pouring in against Baltimore. Both teams are heading towards like a 10.9 season win number where it's going to be at 10.5 shaded to the over or 11 shaded to the under. Further, the spot is so much better for your Philadelphia Eagles here. The Eagles have a bye early in the year. Baltimore Ravens won't have had their bye yet. Further, the Ravens play Monday night in Los Angeles against the Chargers. Then they fly all the way home on a short week. Now, it's a situation where Philly has a bad travel spot also, but Philly gets an extra day and 6 hours to prepare. Everything points to the Eagles. Blue Horseshoe, Ross Tucker, loves your Eagles +4.
I'll give you one more. That Chargers Monday night game is going to be a very hyped game, the Harbaugh Bowl. Yeah, there's going to be a lot put into that game because, don't kid yourself, those brothers want to beat each other's brains in these games, right? It's like
Great
bragging
point.
rights. It's like, can you imagine? So the Ravens are going to put an awful lot into that game. So that even furthers your point, Steve, because that's going to be a really big game, Monday night game. Everybody's watching, all those things. Love it. Good stuff, Steve, on both of those. Speaking of good stuff, or maybe not good stuff, you were texting me and said, I want to give a Disney World review. So peeling back the curtain a little bit, last week, we had already previously recorded the show, or most of it, or all of it, I can't remember, because, Steve, I knew you were going to be traveling last week. Is that where you went, Disney World? I don't even know that I knew that.
Yeah, so my son is 13. He's getting older to the point where I was like, gosh, I want to be a good parent, take him to Disney. We had a really nice time. Disney has 4 major parks, Disney World in Orlando. Our preference was actually the Magic Kingdom was our least favorite because it just, not because of anything necessarily with the rides. The rides are good and iconic, like the Haunted Mansion and the Pirates of the Caribbean, but it's just too crowded because that's the most iconic park, and it's not laid out well. There's just too many bodies. There's too many really young kids that are going with their parents, and it's hot in the summertime in Orlando in the summer, and there's just not enough indoor things, enough air-conditioned spots to hide out and get your batteries recharged. So I far preferred, my family did, Epcot and Hollywood, those parks. We didn't go to the Wild Animal Park, so I can't review that. But the other 2 parks I would recommend, being much less crowded, and we enjoyed them more.
Is Epcot where they have the Soarin' one?
Yeah, Soarin' was my favorite ride. It's like
I love Soarin'.
Oh, you're hang
We
gliding.
did that. Now listen, this was like, we took our girls 7 years ago when they were 5 and 3, and we were going to go back the COVID year. And then COVID happened, you couldn't go. And next thing I know, we kind of missed it. Not that we can't go again, but we kind of missed it. But I just remember soaring. We did that 2 or 3 times. I loved it. Like you really feel like you're flying on top of everything. We lost some trust, by the way, Steve, from our children because we took them on Tower of Terror when they were 5 and 3. And we did not warn them what was about to happen. And they were very confident we were going to die. Like their faces, it was a bad decision. We should have either not taken them on it or we should have warned them ahead of time what was going to happen.
For those who are unfamiliar, Tower of Terror is a elevator that like crashes downward and then back up, and it literally is terrifying. The beauty of it is if you have like a bad back or if you have motion sickness, you can go on this one. You're just dropping straight down and back up. As a bad parent, I took my son when he was 7 on that same ride, and he was literally screaming, "Stop the ride! Stop the ride!" He's crying. He held up much better at 13. Yeah, it's a great ride.
Steve, let's get to an email question or two. It's one of my favorite parts of the show. As a reminder, you can always send me your questions for Steve, ross@rosstucker.com. That's also where you send if you take advantage of any sponsor. You take advantage of any sponsor or become a patron. It's pretty much that time with our bets going to be posted soon, thanks to Grades, our Australian sensation. Patreon.com/RTmedia, or rate and review the show, or any sponsor you hear on the show or whatever. Ross@rosstucker.com. This one, Steve, comes from Zach Baker. Steve, do you ever split units? If so, what makes splitting units valuable, considering if a play is plus EV, you'd ideally like to get full value out of it? And how do you in particular, Steve, get your bets in the books that don't take your picks or limit your amounts? This is from Zach Baker. Let's start with splitting units. I got to be honest, Steve, I didn't know that was a thing. He just means if a unit for you is $100, he just means betting $150.
I'm not certain, Zach Baker, the touchdown maker, what he's referring to, but I think he might be speaking more in terms of like derivative betting. Like if you really like a team, Ross, do you want to put all your eggs in one basket and bet, let's say you're going to put 2 units on them plus 7, maybe you diversify a little bit, right? Maybe you put half a unit first half plus 4, half a unit game plus 7. The advantage of betting the same game, the same team in different matters, maybe you bet them first quarter plus a half, is you diversify your portfolio. And if you're convinced you have the right side, it doesn't come down to maybe one random play. Now, having said that, if you have a game you feel is significantly misaligned, do you want your bet decided in 15 minutes of action, 30 minutes, or 60 minutes? Give me the 60 minutes. That's the beauty of the season win bets. If you have a really good season win bet, you've got the entire year for it to play out right. So, by example, if you bet a baseball season win bet, if you bet the Cleveland Indians over 80 wins, you're going to win. Because if your handicap is right and there aren't injuries, you're getting into the long run. And so, because of that, you probably should bet more on the game than a first half or another derivative.
Yeah, I guess I thought he meant if he's doing like $100 a game, $100 a unit, right? And he likes a game, he puts 1 unit on it. He loves a game, he puts 2 units on it. What if he really likes a game?
Yeah, I would
like
say
he doesn't love it, he doesn't like it, he really likes it. Then does he put $150 on the game?
Yep, but I would say 2% of bankroll on a typical play. Put 3% on a play you really like, and 1% on a play you just, strong lean, kind of like it. And the one exception would be if there's just a line that's completely wrong. If the South Sudan is catching 43.5 and you think they can beat the U.S., you might want to bet more than 3 units on that.
And then in terms of getting your bets in at the books that don't take your picks or limit your amounts, you have like partners, right? Like how do you do that?
Yeah, I'm going to disclose it. Somebody bars me. We
got like 10 seconds, by the way.
Yeah, it's personal. I'll send 7th cousins in. I'll send them all in to kill the quarterback.
Someone bars you, you're going to send others in your stead. I love it. Can't wait for next week. We got a real game to bet on next week. I think we're done here. Good luck, everybody. Hope you guys win some money.
Thanks for tuning in to Even Money. Make sure to also check out the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, Fantasy Feast, and College Draft, all on the DraftKings Network, YouTube, or subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform.